Is it that time of year again when a Game of Thrones show drops some new Targaryen prophecy related bombshells and I'm gonna make a very long video talking about it? Why yes. Yes it is. And this time it starts with a fortune teller at a tournament in Ashford Meadow. You shall be king and die in hot fire, and worms shall feed upon your ashes, and all who know you shall rejoice in your dying. Not exactly the future you want to hear from a fortune teller, and yet that's exactly what young Egg is told in episode 3 of Night of the Seven Kingdoms by this mysterious fortune teller. Now this will be a video with heavy spoilers for the rest of Dunk and Egg's lives and A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, so if you don't want to be burdened with knowledge, this is a video you may want to come back to later. And the reason for that warning is simple. The future of Egg being king, dying in hot fire, worms feasting on his ashes, people rejoicing at his death, it's all true. Well, mostly true. There's some discrepancies I'm going to talk about in this video, and it's in those discrepancies that I think the true point of this inclusion of prophecy into Egg's life is important. Because, of course, Egg is not just some cute nickname. It's short for Aegon, the name of his ancestor, the conqueror of Westeros, Aegon the Dragon. And it's Egg who will one day be called King Aegon V, also known as the Unlikely, and he will die in an enormous fire that he lit to bring back the symbol of his house, dragons. To start off with, let's go over this crucial scene in detail. Dunk and Egg are walking through the tournament grounds after hearing a wild song about a woman named Alice and her missing fingers and all the unexpected places they turned up in. They turn a corner and a mysterious woman in a purple cloak approaches them with a cup and says, "Say your fortune?" Clearly hoping for a copper to tell the pair their fortune. Dunk says to her, "Oh, go on," and the woman tells Dunk that he shall know great success and be richer than a Lannister. Dunk chuckles as it's a pretty common fortune to be told. Sure, yeah, I'll be rich and successful. That's what everyone wants to hear. Tell the next person they'll have as many children as Garth Greenhand. The next one they'll be a great hero like Florian the Fool. It's pretty standard. He tells the fortune teller to do Egg next, and she turns to him as an odd look comes over her face. She then says, "You shall be king and die in hot fire, and worms shall feed upon your ashes, and all who know you shall rejoice in your dying." Egg asks an incredulous, "What?" when Dunk's laugh cuts through the moment as he says, "Thank you, that's very good," and the fortune teller looks around like she was awoken from some kind of trance. Dunk pays her the copper, and the fortune teller walks away down the dirt road, not talking nor stopping for anyone else, basically never to be seen again. Dunk's reaction is him being impressed by the quality of the entertainment, the creativity to tell some random squire from the Reach that he will be king. To Dunk, she has earned her money despite her lackluster reading of Dunk's future. To Egg, though, this is startling and shakes him deeply. The reason for this mismatch is at this point of the episode, Dunk doesn't know something crucial. He doesn't know that Egg is short for Aegon. Egg knows this, of course, that he is about 11th in line from the Iron Throne, and as a member of House Targaryen, it is conceivable he could become King of Westeros, even if it is very unlikely. Not only that, but the Targaryens have always had a very strong relationship to prophecy and dreams. I have a lot of videos on this topic detailing all the different ways that I'll link in the description. However, kind of a brief summary. The founder of the royal dynasty, Aegon the Conqueror, had dreams of White Walkers returning. Daenerys the Dreamer foresaw the doom of Valyria, convincing her father to leave for Westeros. Princess Helena dreamed all her life of things yet to come, including the death of her children, as well as her brother Aemon losing his eye for Vhagar. King Viserys I dreamed of his future son Aegon II and the dance of the dragons that would erupt around him. And far more personally for Egg, his older brother Prince Daeron, known as the Drunkard. Daeron dreams every night of things yet to come, and drinks heavily to forget them and to attempt to pass without dreaming to spare him one night. Because Daeron believes his dreams, he knows they come true. And more importantly, so does Egg, having presumably seen them come true in the past. I even suspect Maester Aemon probably has a record of Daeron's dreams when he was Daeron's personal maester before he went to the Wall. I talk about this in the video, Maester Aemon's Secret Shame. If there was anyone in the world of Westeros who would hear a fortune teller tell them a very specific yet unlikely possible future and believe it, it would probably be Egg. And we can see from his reaction and how it troubles him that he is taking what he heard seriously. Dunk brushes it off and they go about the rest of their day with Egg popping into Tansel's tent for another puppet show, while Dunk joins Raymond Fossway for a drink of cider in his tent and some Targaryen xenophobia. And that's the rub. We as viewers of Game of Thrones and readers of the books know that there's good reason for Egg to wonder if this prophecy does come true, because it does. Despite being so far from the throne, through a series of accidents, tragedies, bad luck, and age, he ascends the throne. Prince Baelor dies in the trial by 7 at the end of this tournament. King Daeron II and Baelor's 2 sons Valar and Mataris die in the Great Spring Sickness, a plague that sweeps across Westeros in the year after the tournament. Daeron's second son, the bookish nerd Aerys I, becomes king after him, with Baelor's line extinguished. Aerys's heir, his younger brother Rhaegal, dies in 215 AC choking on a lamprey pie. Rhaegal's son and heir, Aelor, dies in a supposed freak accident with his sister wife, Alora, leaving no children behind. When Aerys I dies in 221 AC of natural causes, the crown falls to his youngest brother, Maekar I, Egg's father. After Maekar ascends the throne, Daeron the Drunkard succumbs to a pox he supposedly picked up from a sex worker, leaving behind only his daughter Vaella. Maekar's second son, Aerion the Monstrous, dies in spectacular fashion in 232 AC when he drinks a cup of wildfire, claiming it will turn him into a dragon. The wildfire instead turns Aerion into a corpse, as shockingly, wildfire is not a thing you should be drinking. Aerion leaves behind his infant son Maekor. So at this point, the Targaryen family tree has gone from a very healthy growing tree with lots of leaves and branches into one with very few branches left. Maekar dies in 233 AC while leading a siege during the Peak Uprising, crushed by a huge rock, leaving a big conundrum to the realm while bells ring across King's Landing for their fallen king. Speaking of bells, if you're enjoying this video and my others, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, and turn on notifications via the bell icon so you never miss more of my extreme prophecy speculation. Since the Lords decided that not having a penis is a disqualifying offense, despite Vaella, daughter of Daeron, being next in line, she is quickly passed over, same as Maekar's 2 daughters, Rhae and Daella. Maegor, son of Aerion, is a baby, and nobody wants an infant king with the looming rebellions of the Blackfire still going on, as well as the Peak Uprising. So the only 2 options left are the Maester Aemon, who we know from Game of Thrones as the kindly old man at Castle Black, and his younger brother, Egg. It would seem here that the choice is a clear one. Aemon is a Maester sworn to give up his inheritance as a prince, so Egg should be named king. However, Egg, during his travels with Duncan the Tall, as well as his time as court, managed to piss off many of the greatest lords of the realm, particularly with his constant pushing for the rights of small folk and curtailing lords' powers. As a result, a great council was called to have the lords of the realm decide who will be king. And the not-so-secret reason for this is that the lords want to make Aemon remove his maester's chain and take the crown instead of Egg. However, there's a wrinkle. Aenys Blackfyre, the 3rd son of the infamous Daemon Blackfyre, writes a letter asking permission to put his name forward at the council, reasoning that while the Blackfyres are traitors, a dragon is still a dragon. Maybe they could stop the non-stop Targaryen civil wars from Essos, with Aenys ascending the throne and a truce being forged between the 2 branches of the Dragon House. Maybe marry one of Maekar's remaining daughters and end a divide. Hand of the King Bloodraven agrees, and then promptly arrests and executes Aenys as soon as he arrives in King's Landing. And then he personally delivers Aenys' head to the Great Council, just Bloodraven things. The Lords of the Realm attempt to persuade Aemon strongly that he should take the throne, however he refuses to take off his maester's chain despite assurances from the High Septon and the Maesters that he can totally do so. With no other viable options, Aegon V, also known as the Unlikely, is made King of Westeros against all odds. So well done by the Ashford fortune teller on that one. 1 for 1. Correct. Egg accepts the crown and does as his older brother advised him, kill the boy. Allow me to give my lord one last piece of counsel, the old man had said. The same counsel that I once gave my brother when we parted for the last time. He was 33 when the great council chose him to mount the Iron Throne, a man grown with sons of his own, yet in some ways still a boy. Egg had an innocence to him, a sweetness we all love. Kill the boy within you, I told him the day I took ship for the wall. It takes a man to rule, and Aegon, not an egg. Kill the boy and let the man be born. What about the second part of that now partially true prophecy, that Egg will die in hot fire and the worms shall feed upon his ashes? Well, 2 for 2 on this one, as Egg does eventually die in 259 AC at the tragedy of Summerhall while trying to hatch eggs. I have 2 long-form videos on this, Pyres and Blood and Maester Aemon's Secret Shame, as well as an entire live stream where I go into far more detail about the circumstances and causes of the Great Fire that killed Egg. As you can tell, this has been a passion project for me for some time. To set the stage, those great lords that did not want Egg to become king because of his small folk-centric policies and personal grievances, yeah, they didn't go anywhere when a crown was put upon his royal head. Egg's reign is marked by political instability, invasions, and rebellions. Many lords were unhappy with the king demanding they treat their subjects like they were human, and the Blackfires took advantage. They sought out the lords unhappy with Egg as king and launched the Fourth Blackfire Rebellion in 236 AC before being defeated by the stroke of Duncan the Tall's sword when he killed Daemon III Blackfire in single combat. Not only that, but Egg faced rebellions among his own children. His eldest, Duncan the Small, refused his marriage pact to Lord Lionel Baratheon's daughter, marrying instead the commoner Jenny of Oldstones. This insult launched Lionel's rebellion when he declared himself Storm King, only ended when, again, Duncan the Tall, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, defeated Lionel in single combat. At the core of it all, though, was the lords of Westeros recognizing the power of the Targaryens was failing over time without their giant flying death lizards. Then Egg and the tatters of his house, they only faced men, not the dragons of old Valyria anymore. Without the imminent threat of fiery violence, they could be beaten and resisted, a fact that Egg recognized. Another contributing factor is during Egg's reign there were extremely long winters. One lasted 6 years. These extreme weather events saw Egg diverting food from the south to the north, where the extended winters saw most of the north starving as their stores ran out. This act of generosity from their king angered many of his southern vassals, who thought they needed the food more than those northern savages who can deal with winter anyway, who cares. Egg was heard saying at court that he could finally push his reforms to all parts of the realm, end the Blackfire pretenders' threats, and get his unhappy lords in line if only he had dragons again. And so he remembered his brother Daeron's dreams of the dragons returning, as well as the prophecies read in scrolls by his uncle, Aerys I. They all said the dragons would return one day, and Egg decided that day would be during his reign, damn it. He became obsessed with the idea near the end of his life, scouring Westerosi libraries and reaching as far as the dark city of Ashai for answers on how to hatch these remaining dragon eggs. While the dragons were all dead during Egg's time, their eggs were not. They had quite a few of them. He himself had a dragon egg placed in his cradle, as all Targaryens had since the time of Queen Rhaenyra I. I also believe he asked his brother Aemon for help, corresponding by letter to Castle Black trying to search for information. As you might expect, there was pushback from across the realm to these efforts. None of Egg's vassals wanted to return to the times of dragons in the air so that he could enforce whatever he wanted, as the Targaryens had done in the past. Egg had a plan for this, though. He wanted to integrate the worship of dragons into the faith of the Seven to avoid the problems of the faith militant of the past, and so he chose 7 of their eggs to be hatched. However, he still lacked the means to hatch them, but in 259 AC, at Summerhall, Egg seemingly found his answer, or what he thought it was. He gathered his family, 7 dragon eggs, pyromancers in their wildfire, and Duncan the Tall to the Targaryen manor house of Summerhall. There, we get description from Maester Corso about the tragedy that followed. The blood of the dragon gathered in one. 7 eggs to honor the 7 gods, the king's own septon had warned. Pyromancers. Wildfire. Flames grew out of control. Towering. Burned so hot that died, but for the valor of the Lord command. And thanks to George, that's all we know, because in the world of Ice and Fire, he decided there would be ink blots over crucial information so that we cannot know. Wildfire erupted, as it is known to do, all over Summerhall, and the fire killed almost all of the royal family and Egg's closest advisors. Egg and Dunk both died in that fire, the only survivors being Egg's son Jaehaerys, his sister wife Shera, and their 2 children Aerys and the pregnant Rhaella. And then a surprising survivor, Aerys and Rhaella's son Rhaegar, who was born that night as the flames devoured the Targaryens. Something only death can pay for life. Afterwards, Summerhall is never rebuilt, and the newly crowned Jaehaerys II and the rest of the survivors never speak of what happened inside again. The only member of the family to ever return, as far as we know, is Prince Rhaegar, who was known to visit the grounds with his harp alone and then return with sad songs to play to the court. Of course, that is the official story of what happened and why Egg pushed for dragons to return. As we know from his belief in his brother Daeron's dreams and his uncle Aerys' scholarship, Egg is a character who believes firmly in prophecy. As do his children, the future Mad King Aerys was married to his sister Rhaella against both of their wishes because the Woods Witch, the ghost of Highheart who came to court with Jenny of Oldstones, told their father that the prince that was promised would be born from their union. Not only that, we have sources in the World of Ice and Fire and House of the Dragon that Aegon the Conqueror dreamed of the White Walkers returning and then conquered Westeros to fulfill that prophecy, which was passed down to his predecessors one after another, could have even led to Egg as well, whether directly by word of mouth or scrolls that he found later on or Aerys found. It would not be surprising in the slightest, as I argued in my Pyre and Bloods video, that Egg was motivated not just by political machinations and defense against the Blackfires to bring back the dragons, but he was instead following the Conqueror's dream. He was trying to avert the apocalypse. It's even possible that, like his brother Daeron, Egg eventually dreamed himself of the dragons being born from a massive pyre. Certainly if you think the end of the world is coming, and the 2 longest winters and many decades happening during your reign, maybe that one day is now. Portents of a winter that never ends from beyond the wall, and you need dragons. Fast. In the aftermath, Summerhall is never rebuilt. The ashes of the dead left inside the building for all time. So, down to the word, 2 for 2 on the prophecies from the fortune teller. She nails exactly how Egg dies and what becomes of his remains. What about the third prediction though? That all who know Egg will rejoice at his dying. If you're like me, you heard this and immediately thought, wait a second, that can't be right. All who know Egg rejoiced? Did everyone in production forget that Maester Aemon exists? Egg's older brother who speaks fondly of his lost younger brother many times in the show and books. And while Egg was unpopular among his vassals, they didn't all hate him and were happy for his death. Egg has his enemies for sure, especially among the 9 Penny Kings who immediately upon Egg's death launched an invasion of the Stepstones, led by Maelys the monstrous Blackfire. But everyone who knows him? Aemon in particular mourns the loss of Egg and his family the rest of his life, and you need no more than his example to disprove the statement of the fortune teller. There's no shot Aemon rejoiced at Egg's death. Okay, so how do we square this information with what Egg is being told by the fortune teller, where it's seemingly 2 truths and a lie? The first option is everyone is asleep at the wheel at the night of the 7 Kingdoms production. This line, when it was written by their staff, all the way from conception to the episode being shot to being aired tonight, nobody thought, wait, Maester Aemon exists. That makes this line nonsense. Now, while I understand there is skepticism amongst Thrones fans for show writers omitting or forgetting things like, I don't know, Iron Fleets, I feel like there's no way this is possible. Maester Aemon has already been referenced in this show, and the writing team that includes showrunner Ira Parker, T. Mickle, Hiram Martinez, Annie Julia Wyman, and the late Aziza Barnes, as well as George R.R. Martin. The writing team plus George spent a week together in a writer's summit going over these scripts, plotting episodes and the arc of the show together. There's no way something this big would be brought to that group of people, including George, and none of them say, hey, are we saying Aemon rejoiced at his brother's death? So I am choosing to reject that as a hypothesis, that they are so careless that they forgot Maester Aemon exists and his relationship to Egg. Nothing else in the show so far leads me to believe that is likely or possible. That leaves us with the conclusion that this prediction from the fortune teller is intentionally wrong, with an obvious counterexample. So why would they do this? The first obvious explanation is that not all prophetic characters correctly interpret nor communicate what they see in their dreams or in the future. Melisandre is the prime example that while she does have genuine magical abilities to see the future, she doesn't always get them right. Her belief that Stannis Baratheon is the prince that was promised stands out as the prime example. In both show and book, Melisandre uses sorcery to give Stannis a fake Lightbringer. If you have to fake the red sword of heroes that will mark the prince, then that probably means it's not him. And there's so many examples throughout the rest of the books. George wrote a colorful line to explain the uncertainty of prophecy in his world. Prophecy is like a half-trained mule. It looks as though it might be useful, but the moment you trust in it, it kicks you in the head. And I think that's the simplest answer here. The fortune teller got the last part just wrong, which makes some sense. The prophecy she gives Dunk is also half wrong. While it is true that Dunk achieves great success in his life, becoming a folk hero, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, legendary warrior, and the best example of knighthood Westeros may ever seen, he certainly does not become as rich as a Lannister. As a Kingsguard, he really doesn't have any wealth, and it isn't mentioned anywhere that he has extraordinarily sums of valuables throughout his life. His life and needs are paid for by the crown, and while he lives pretty well off as a Kingsguard, he's not personally wealthy. And I guess this makes some sense. Through both examples, the show is introducing some uncertainty in their own invented prophecy so that the audience is unsure where they are going. The idea that Dunk does end up as rich of a Lannister, and that for some reason everyone's rejoicing Egg's death would be a major departure from what we know about them. While I find this explanation of sometimes prophecy is wrong as plausible, it seems like a really odd choice to introduce doubt in the ability of the show to know the material they are even adapting. That every content creator you know is right now talking about this in confusion is not a good thing. Especially if the only reason is to demonstrate that A, prophecy is unreliable, or B, that this is foreshadowing a major change in their stories many seasons into the future. The answer I prefer and makes the most sense to me is that Egg is being told this intentionally to push him towards Summerhall. While many think that prophecies are always true in some sense, the truth is that there's nothing stopping people who give them out from being deceptive or manipulative. The prime example is Cersei Lannister and her encounter with Maggie the Frog. Cersei Lannister as a teenager demanded the Magi tell her future, asking 3 questions after Maggie demanded her blood as payment. Cersei asks when she will wed the prince. Maggie says never, but she will wed the king instead. Cersei then asks if she will be queen. Maggie responds that she will be until a younger, more beautiful queen casts her down and takes all she holds dear. Cersei asks finally, would she and the king have children? And Maggie responds that she will have 3, while the king will have 16, and then goes on to say that gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds, and that when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands around your pale white throat and choke the life from you. While most of what Maggie says is true and has come to pass, it's certainly way more than Cersei asked for. Cersei never asked how she will die, but Maggie went ahead and gave that information too as a bonus prophecy. Cersei also never asked how long she'd be a queen. Maggie again, helpfully tacking on that she'll be overthrown by a younger, more beautiful queen. Nor does Cersei ask if her children will be monarchs after her, nor how they die. And again, Maggie very, very helpfully supplies that information for her. We also get from Cersei's perspective that Maggie gives her a look full of malice and anger, heavily implied that Maggie is intentionally screwing with Cersei using these prophecies. Makes sense, Cersei threatened to have her killed. Cersei spends the rest of her life obsessing over what she was told in this encounter after she sees the prophecies of Maggie the Frog come true one by one. First, when she doesn't marry Prince Rhaegar, instead the newly crowned King Robert Baratheon. Second, she becomes queen by that marriage. Third, she has 3 children, although with her brother Jaime, while Robert has numerous bastard children, apparently 16. Seeing those predictions come true, Cersei becomes paranoid by younger, more beautiful queens, the death of her children, and the Valonqar. By the same token, Egg may be told these 2 truths and a lie in order to shape Egg's decisions in the future, either with malice like Maggie the Frog did to Cersei, or because whoever did this is trying to shape a future where Egg becomes increasingly paranoid and distrustful of those he's closest to, maybe isolates himself. And like Cersei, after Egg sees these start coming true, he's probably going to start looking for the others. Like when he becomes king against all odds, does he suddenly start worrying about dying in hot fire? And everyone who knows him rejoicing at that. Planting in a monarch's mind paranoia about an awful death and everyone around him secretly hating him is not a neutral act. It's very damaging to their psyche. But then we get the next logical question. Why this fortune teller? What does she have against Egg? How does she even know these things about him and wants to steer him towards his inevitable death at Summerhall? Well, it may be somebody we already know. First possibility is that this fortune teller is the very same Woods Witch, the ghost of Highheart, who later came to Egg's court with Jenny of Oldstones. We meet the ghost in Arya's chapters where she bargains off her prophetic dreams to the Brotherhood Without Banners in exchange for Tom with 7 strings singing her Jenny's song. She also claims when she meets Arya that she gorged on grief at Summerhall, implying that the ghost was either there or felt tremendous emotional loss from it. Considering it's suspected that Jenny and her Prince Duncan died in the flames, it all lines up that this is the very same Woods Witch. And we know from her suggesting Jaehaerys marry his children to each other for the sake of prophecy that in her younger years the ghost had a much more active view towards prophecy and shaping the future. Atop the hill of Highheart, although she knows the future in her dreams, she has retreated from the world and lives among the chopped down weirwoods mourning the loss of her Jenny. But previously, she was more than willing to live in and among the Targaryens in King's Landing, as well as deliver them very important and true prophecies. Yeah, probably true ones as well. since both Daenerys and Jon Snow are descended from Aerys and Rhaella. If either or both of them end up the prince that was promised, another win for the Ghost of Highheart. She was right. And we know from what she tells the Brotherhood Without Banners that she is right pretty much all the time. Everything she tells them does come true, even if it takes a while or George doesn't reveal it right away. So perhaps this moment with Egg is the first time she decided to push the hand of fate herself, making sure that Egg ends up dying at Summerhall in flames. Of course, the main problem with this theory is that while this woman is shorter than Dunk, the Ghost of Highheart is described to be very short, only around 3 feet tall. And not only that, she's an albino with white hair and red eyes. And we also know that when she did come to court, she looked the same as she does when Arya meets her, with Barristan Selmy describing her as a stunted and grotesque dwarf. Clearly, the fortune teller is none of those things. However, this could just be a change in casting for the reality of television creation. Much the same as Peter Claffey is not almost 7 feet tall like Dunk is, mayhaps they could not find a 3-foot albino dwarf to play the role, or just didn't want to, and so they changed it to being this fortune teller. But another possibility is that while the ghost eventually does appear as a dwarf albino, maybe right now she's wearing a glamour. Notably, on the fortune teller's finger is a ring with a large orange gemstone on it. Within A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, as demonstrated by Melisandre, gemstones can be used to cast glamours, which are magic spells which change the size and appearance of the person. I can't tell for sure, but there also may be some gemstones on the fortune teller's wristband. So if she can change her appearance, it would make a lot of sense thematically for this to be the Ghost of Highheart. She has a history of actively delivering prophecies to the Targaryens and intervening in the flow of time using true visions. She also has extremely strong connections to the tragedy at Summerhall, as well as Egg's family through Jenny of Oldstones. And we know she has true visions of the future, which this fortune teller appears to have as well. So if she's wearing a glamour, or the show just decided to recast the character for ease of production, that all fits really nicely. Second possibility here is Alice Rivers from House of the Dragon. I talked about her a fair bit in my video titled Start Here Before You Watch A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, but basically Alice disappears at the end of the Dance of the Dragons. No corpse is found, she just disappears with a child and is erased from the history books. And her actress Gayle Rankin claims she is hundreds of years old despite having a very youthful appearance. So perhaps this is Alice Rivers in the future, either finally showing some age or wearing another disguise. Although it would be roughly 80 years since the end of the dance, so for sure she would need a glamour since the fortune teller does not appear to be roughly 100 years old. And the same logic works here as for the ghost. The prominent gemstone could be hiding a glamour. And again, like the Ghost of Highheart, Alice has a history of interfering with and messing with Targaryen princes. She manipulates Daemon extensively at Harrenhal through the mysterious red drinks she gives him, as well as seemingly giving him dreams and nightmares to guide his psyche. And there's quite a lot that happens with Aemon. Also, as well as through the Weirwoods, she shows him visions of the White Walkers, the dragons dying, and even Daenerys Targaryen hatching dragon eggs. It would definitely be in Alice's personality and her style of manipulation to decide to use magical powers to shunt Egg towards Summerhall at a very young age. Why she does these things, we do not know. Definitely not above being very manipulative to the Targaryens. Everything that works for the Ghost also works for Alice. Glamour, screws with the Targaryens, magic powers, perfect. And the last possibility is maybe a bit off the wall, but Brynden Rivers, aka the Bloodraven. Bloodraven at this time is a member of King Daeron II's court and likely his master of whispers, but at the same time he's also in the far future as the three-eyed crow that Bran meets beyond the wall. How he got there? Well, that's a tale for another video. However, he's not just a green seer and skin changer. Bloodraven is also a sorcerer and one of the few characters outside the Faceless Men and Melisandre to successfully cast a glamour on himself. In the Mystery Knight, he disguises himself as the knight Sir Maynard Plum, using a moonstone to infiltrate the White Walls tournament. And Bloodraven is a well-known liar who will do anything to achieve his goals, hugely manipulative in his life before and after being entombed in his Weirwood throne. All crows are liars, as old Nan says. One of the problems would be, while it's never explicit how much Bloodraven knows about the future while he is south of the wall and during this time, it is surely less than when he becomes a Weirwood old god. As a Greenseer, he could certainly receive visions of the future, just like the Ghost of Highheart, and one of them could very well be Egg's future as king and his fiery death. This would be quite a huge move for Bloodraven as a character though, because not only is he noticeably not at the Ashford Meadow tournament, but it would imply that he knew for Egg's entire life he would be king one day, and then took actions to make sure it happened. There's a lot of conspiracies and running joke in the fandom that whenever anyone dies, there's a hail of "Bloodraven did it" as explanations, which in fairness is a reputation the fictional character earned and encouraged. He did use his magical abilities to spy and manipulate the flow of history like almost no one else has. Those moments though have always been framed as a guy who is gathering information and using his abilities to gain an advantage rather than someone who already knows the outcomes. This would be a huge revelation if Bloodraven really is running around as a fortune teller at Ashford Meadow with highly accurate knowledge of the future. But if you want to believe it's him, during this close-up you can see there's this kind of red color on the fortune teller's cheek and neck that look mighty suspicious. Bloodraven is known for the red wine stain mark on his cheek, the Bloodraven that his nickname came from. This could very well be a hint from the show about who is hiding behind a glamour giving out truths of the future. Working against that though is that those red spots seem to disappear on this wide shot and also disappears in another close-up on the fortune teller's face. My guess is that this is probably a trick of the light and her purple cloak and hood, creating a shadow that looks red in one shot, either from grading or by accident, or a problem with makeup. Maybe she had some pimples and they got covered up. That is only a guess though. If you want to see a red raven on her face, I would not call you crazy. Another possibility though is that this is the work of future Bloodraven from his Weirwood throne, not the one that's currently walking around. We know that he can and does manipulate characters via dreams and visions. He's the one that sends dream after dream to Jojen Reed and Bran Stark to make Bran abandon Winterfell and come north of the Wall to become his apprentice. We also know from his position in the future that he does know and can visit the past the same as Bran does. So if he wanted to plant a dream in the mind of a fortune teller, he probably could. One advantage of this possibility is that it does not require a glamour, since it would just be Bloodraven manipulating a prophetic character in the fortune teller who's already there. No disguise necessary, just screwed with her head. No matter why this was done to Egg, this is a huge change to his character and story going forwards. This does not happen in the 3 novellas. No one tells Egg he will be king one day, nor that he will die in a fire, nor that everyone he knows will be very happy about it. Now there is a lot of foreshadowing and hints all over the place throughout the 3 novellas for readers who know where he ends up, but that's just for us though. Egg cannot read the books he is in to see these things. I don't have a solid opinion on how exactly I feel about this yet. I am fascinated to see where this ends up going. Where does this butterfly wing flapping end up for a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? Is this George revealing information he always intended to, or something that they are changing for the show in particular? My personal preference and what I think is that it is the Ghost of Highheart, either recast or in disguise, but I'm excited to find out what the truth here is. And you know what? I'm gonna feel good and stupid if it turns out Ira Parker, Gurm, and his team actually just forgot about Aemon and this is no big deal. Now, if you've enjoyed this video and want more, again, make sure you subscribe, ring that bell for notifications on my channel, and make sure you check out the playlist Dreams of Dragons, where through videos and live streams, I talk extensively about the role of prophecy in these shows and the books and the Targaryens. There's also merch through the Threadless shop in the description, as well as a Patreon where you can get access to videos early, behind the scenes content, access to my fan Discord, and more. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Bye for now.